Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's free TPC Training public webinar entitled Where Troubleshooting and Training Come Together, Using Software to Efficiently Understand Our Machines and Processes. My name is Ryan Smith, Product Manager today, and with our instructor-led training division, but also our TPC Operate division, which we're going to talk about as well today. Our goal today is to really talk about that training and that experience all of our technicians have outside of the classroom, right? So we all know that good classroom training can be worth its weight in gold, but really good on the job training and having the tools you need to do troubleshooting on the job is really where the magic happens in terms of succeeding in the job, right? You can have all the best knowledge gained from the classroom, but if you're prevented in other ways from doing troubleshooting on the job or training on the job, it gets to be a little more difficult to succeed at those jobs. So we're going to talk about kind of some of the best practices there when it comes to troubleshooting and training, and really specifically around how can we use software to efficiently understand our machines and processes for the sake of troubleshooting and training. I just want to let everyone know today, before we get started, that this session is being recorded. So feel free to watch the recording. That's going to be posted to our website about 2 business days after this session is over. Also, everyone who's been registered for this event will be sent a link to that recording, as well as the PDF of all the slides you're going to see today. So feel free to stay tuned for those slides after this session is over. And finally, this session is live right now, and because of that, we should interact. Feel free to ask any questions about troubleshooting process, software, on-the-job training, etc. As we begin talking about them today, feel free to send me a message here in the Q&A line. So if you see on your toolbar, there's going to be a bunch of things down there, but one of the things you're going to see is the button Q&A. That's where you can type in your question. So you click the Q&A button, you can type in a question and it'll come directly to me, and I'll be able to answer those questions by the end of the session. So we'll start the Q&As officially as soon as we talk about the topic for the first few minutes here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And in doing so, I would like to learn a little bit more about those of you who are here. I'm going to launch a quick poll, a live poll here for everyone in here, just to pick your brain a little bit about how the troubleshooting and on-the-job training process is going in your facilities. So what you should see popping up in your screen in a few moments is a poll with questions, and it is launching right now. So a window should be popping up for you right now. And what you can do to answer these questions is click on the answer that most applies to you and scroll down for the rest of the questions. There's about 3 questions here. And answer those 3 questions and then submit your poll, and your answers will be coming live to me. And then I'll share all the results from everyone's answers at the end of the poll. So let's take the next few moments to answer the question. What are those questions? Question number 1 is, for all of you out there watching, how often do you troubleshoot live electrical or mechanical equipment on the job? Are you troubleshooting very often, occasionally, just as needed, rarely, or never? Next question is, how well documented would you say that on-the-job training is at your facility? And we call it OJT when we'll get there. Is it very well documented, somewhat documented, neutral, or not very well documented at all? Or just simply not documented at all, right? And then finally, the last question we have for you all is, how easy is it to find the information you need while troubleshooting on the job at your organization? Now, what we talk about here is finding schematics, operating procedures, specifications for equipment and machines, safety precautions you need to follow, etc. Okay, it looks like the answers have all come in. So let's go ahead and end the poll. And now that we have the results, I'm going to go ahead and share them out to you all here for everyone to see. All right, so you should be seeing the poll results if you're watching here live. And I'm going to talk about these results just really briefly here. First of all, you're seeing here that the number 1 answers here is everyone is either very often or at least occasionally troubleshooting in their job. So the importance of troubleshooting cannot be understated in having the ability to troubleshoot quickly and efficiently. How well documented is on the job training at your facility? Well, it goes from all over the map, it looks like here. Some people have very well documented on the job training, some people have somewhat documented. It's really even across the map here. And then finally, how easy is it to find the information you need while troubleshooting? Somewhat easy. Most of you are saying that's good. And some can either take it or leave it. You're neutral on, and maybe even it's just a little bit difficult sometimes to find all the information you need when it comes to schematics or operating procedures you need to do troubleshooting at your facility. Okay, great. So we're going to dig into a little bit more about that. So it looks like when it comes to training on the job, let's say learning how to do some of this troubleshooting on the job, um, it's all across the map in terms of how well documented it can be. Is there a way to create a standard process and something standard you can go to whenever you're looking to troubleshoot a machine that's experiencing downtime, that's most likely unplanned downtime? And is there a way to teach someone the ropes, right, in a more standardized way? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, first topic on the board for discussion is troubleshooting, right? Last couple weeks ago from this session, we had an in-depth look at what troubleshooting is and how to do good troubleshooting. And so I highly recommend you tune into that webinar we gave. Public webinar is about an hour long. Go ahead and check that one out. But in the meantime, what is troubleshooting on the job all about? In particular, what is the importance of learning how to do good troubleshooting on the job, right? Well, first and foremost, it's all about getting your processes up and running as quickly as possible, right? So if your motor driven machine, let's say an extrusion machine or some sort of conveyor system, is just not turning on anymore, it's up to you as the technician to make sure it gets up and running as soon as possible. And I'm sure your supervisor and maybe other people at that organization are right on your back trying to get it to be fixed as quickly as possible, right? So it becomes a little bit stressful when it comes to troubleshooting. And I'm sure because of that, and the reason why is that downtime can cost major dollars every single hour. I really enjoy speaking to our technicians that come to our classes to say, how much does downtime cost in your facility? And I've heard answers ranging from $10,000 per hour it costs us, or all the way up to $500,000 or $1 million per hour of downtime, depending on the operation, right? And so if you think even just at the low value of $10,000, every hour is lost for unplanned downtime, where we're trying to get our operations up. Think about how valuable it would be to save just 15 minutes of time, right? A quarter of that hour on having tools you need to do the troubleshooting quicker and faster. So that's really where software, again, electrons can move through the internet and through our these tablets and computers and software solutions that would take several minutes or hours to find otherwise. So we're going to talk about that. So really, what is the process for troubleshooting? Again, there's a whole systematic approach to troubleshooting that people can follow. It doesn't matter whether it's mechanical, electrical, computer related, interpersonal related, whatever the issue is. There's systematic approaches we can follow. But in generally, we can use our senses to make sure we can see something or hear or even smell something is wrong with the machine. And the two most important tools that you have for troubleshooting after your senses start failing you, and let's say you can't see anything's wrong and you can't see anything's happening, then really measurement devices come into play here during the troubleshooting process. If you're electrical troubleshooting, that means using a multimeter and those electrical schematics. If you're talking about mechanical troubleshooting, maybe you'll need to do some vibration analysis or some infrared testing or some displacement measurement to know what's happening on the mechanical side. And again, schematics when it comes to hydraulics or pneumatics systems, really having those drawings and up-to-date drawings for that matter are going to be super important when it comes to troubleshooting. And again, our troubleshooting webinar we gave just last month, highly recommend you check that out for more in-depth look at the troubleshooting systematic approach and process. But at the end of the day, when it comes to, what tools can be used in the 21st century, it's going to have to all do about how to quickly give us the ability to use those measurement devices and to use and understand those schematics. Now, when it comes to on-the-job training, right? Again, yep, how to shorten the time it takes to troubleshoot. That's our real goal. If we can, again, say 15 minutes a time, 10 minutes a time, 5 minutes a time, it adds up quickly each time we have downtime. So now switching over to on-the-job training, and kind of what I'm setting up here is how on-the-job training really comes together with troubleshooting here. Um, let's say you're onboarding a new technician. Let's say you're trying to teach them the ropes. Getting them into a classroom, let's say a troubleshooting classroom, or how electricity works type of classroom, that ends up becoming 10% of what we learn on in our jobs is what you hear, right? The classic style of learning in the classroom, reading, understanding that way. Then when you're mentored and coached one-on-one, someone showing you how to do it and you observe, that's really the next 20%. And then you do the math, the next 70% of our learning really happens by us doing the job, right? What you do, being able to gain that actual hands-on experience of doing the job. And that's really where on-the-job training is, right? It's in that 70% and also part of that other 20% where you're mentored and coached by a trusted mentor. So on-the-job training, we're going to call OJT throughout the rest of this webinar, is really that learning of those essential tasks of the job under the guidance of a trusted trainer and mentor. And that really is a hands-on proposition here. You're on the job. Okay, here's how to start up this machine. All right, now it's time for you to practice it yourself. That's really what on-the-job training is about. So usually you're introduced to the task, why you do it, what's the importance of it. And then you start practicing that task yourself, right? Now, maybe you can practice the task once and master it. Or maybe you have to do twice, 3 times, 4 times, a dozen times, hundreds of times before you master that task. So practicing the task is good, but you're not done there. You have to master the task and really be verified by that person who is that expert and verify your performance of that task. So that's really an important 3 facets of good on-the-job training is introducing the task, practicing that given task, and verifying performance of that task. Followed by a real documented sign-off, signatures from that mentor and also the trainee themselves for each step of that training process. Here's the kicker, though, for on-the-job training. This is what we're going to talk about. That on-the-job training must be documented. So in other words, if you're just following someone around on the job, all right, watch me. I'm going to show you how to do this. Did you pay attention? Do you got it? Okay, good. And then you move on. That's well and good. And a lot of people are learning that way, kind of trial by fire. All right, you got it, good. And then if it happens again, you're going to do it yourself. But knowing how far along you are, that's just one task, right? Being able to track and monitor and keep track of how far along you are on the job training when it comes to hundreds of tasks you got to be expected to do as a technician, that's where writing it down becomes so important, right? If a certain technician you're training is really exceeding at, let's say, the electrical stuff, but it turns out through all the documentation that some of the mechanical troubleshooting stuff is really making them struggle, it's good to see that and maybe change the approach to the training. And you can't really know that just by he says, she says type of descriptions. Oh yeah, I showed that to the person. You never want the situation to become with on-the-job training that, hey, so-and-so never showed me how to do the job. Right? You can prove that certain tasks were covered at certain dates and certain times. What we call tribal knowledge is important to avoid when it comes to training on the job. By that, I mean knowledge that's just up in the heads of your most experienced maintenance technicians, let's say, but not really put down on paper. Because as you can all imagine, I'm sure you have an example of this in your past as well, that one person on one shift is going to run that equipment and fix that equipment in a way different way than someone on the other shift. And having that one central location of here's the best way to do it and here's the way we as an organization are going to do it becomes so important for good on-the-job training and consistent on-the-job training. So now we know kind of the process of what it takes to do troubleshooting on the job and on the job training on the job. Maybe you can already start to see they're going to start blending together when we start talking about the types of tools we need to succeed at them. We started talking about them already, but having checklists, right? Things you should follow when it comes to either troubleshooting or on the job training. Another tool in your back pocket is SOPs, standard operating procedures. So, do you know exactly how to do this procedure? Let's say fixing a rotating blade on a piece of equipment or locking out and tagging out a piece of equipment. Job safety analysis. Do you know all the precautions you're about to follow in this maintenance procedure or this operation procedure and some of the steps you need to take to reduce that risk? Process flow diagrams. Do you know that if you press this button, what's going to happen after that on the machine? Better yet, you know the flow of material through your operation. Do you know where water's coming in and what it's doing? Do you know where chemicals are coming into the process and what they're doing and where they're leaving, and all that kind of stuff? And then finally, machine schematics. Now, having the schematics for your machine, it becomes so central to not only troubleshooting but on the job training, right? These schematics are the central location for everything about how your machine works. So understanding how to read the schematics and bring them to the real world becomes so important, but also being able to find those schematics quickly and easily when you're troubleshooting, right? If suddenly a certain operation in a very complicated machine stops working, I want you to kind of reflect, what do you do, right? If suddenly the operator just walks up to you and says, "Hey, this machine won't work, help." Well, at this point, right, you're dealing with having to find the issue quickly and readily, and having the schematics at hand are so important, right? So all these things together, proper procedures, safety analyses, the process flow of the machine schematics, all these different documentations. I can even throw in spec sheets for the different pieces of equipment. We can also talk about settings, right? Proper settings, and the manual for that equipment, all these kind of technical documentation. We talked about tools. Well, these aren't tools that we might particularly think of, right? Not a screwdriver, not a hammer, but actual pieces of paper become essential tools for troubleshooting and having access to these pieces of paper, right? But if we have a bunch of these documents, they're going to start really having a struggle in the sense of managing all these pieces of paper, right? So you're going to be filling filing cabinets full. Maybe the rolled up, coffee stained schematics are tossed in the side of an electrical cabinet. I know that happened in my line of work plenty of times. Um, but maybe the job safety analyses are in a binder up in the maintenance office. And then you got to go run around and, hey, was there even a process flow diagram? I don't know. Maybe that guy on that one shift knows where they are, and I got to wait till next shift to troubleshoot this machine. Now, a couple minutes are turning into hours, if not days, of trying to troubleshoot issues. So having this documented is important, but then we deal with the issue of having it all documented on paper, right? So I think you probably see where I'm going here. What if we did have all this documentation, but it was all brought to the 21st century electronically, right? So let's start with on the job training first. All those checklists, all those hours and hours of on the job training with that mentor. Instead of it being all up in their head, that tribal knowledge, what can we use in this 21st century to get them all on board with training? And let's say you as their supervisor or you as their coworker or training manager or whoever it might be, or even you yourself can track how far along you are on your own training path, without having to cycle through papers. This is where we could use technology, particularly forms, right? So if you're going to be filling out checklists with a pen and paper, let's say, you can do the same thing on, let's say, a tablet or an iPad using some sort of mobile form where you can say, all right, this person verified this task, this task, this task, and then wasn't doing so well on this task and this task, and then we sign off here and let's do better next time. Signatures and initials, you can kind of see here. I filled out a form as an example here on this screen of, okay, you can actually literally write your signature on these touch screens now. So the fact that you need to write a signature is not a barrier anymore to using mobile technology that's been around. Our checklists, our standard operating procedures, our JSAs, right? Those job safety analysis can all be baked into these mobile forms and signed off on using these mobile forms. Having that centralized location now, so you don't have to know where the forms are. This is all thanks to the internet and thanks to things like Google and Dropbox and OneDrive on the Microsoft side of things. You can have everything located all in one place, and just secure mobile documentation across the board becomes super important to have. And this really, again, you don't want to have to find out where that physical location of that certain binder or notebook or that rolled up schematic is going to be. You just, all you need to know is how to log in and access everything you need all at your fingertips is going to be super important in today's day and age. Forms, right? In the 21st century, they should be and they can be accessed at any time and on any device. So you don't really need to have that one book or that one filing cabinet that has all the information you need. Ryan can be over here accessing it on his phone while Mary over there has it on her iPad, and they're accessing the same information at the same time. It's all up to date and it's all live. Tracking and monitoring the quality of our on-the-job training is going to be super important, and now you can kind of start to see how that can be quickly done. And finally, I don't want any of the training managers on the call, or let alone the technicians themselves, ever asking, where is your training documentation? Where's the proof that you ever got trained on the job on how to do this? Now you can literally just, with a couple swipes of the finger or clicks of the mouse, you have everything you need. Companies can get in some serious trouble, and we're finding it time and again with our customer base that has had issues when it comes to documenting their training. And because of that, TPC is in the business of helping with on-the-job training, not just classroom training. We see that as just a huge area of opportunity for the industry out there, whether it's manufacturing or otherwise, to get more into it. Now, how are we going to bring the troubleshooting, right? So let's say we've already been trained, and let's say it's years from now, and we're a technician who just is dealing with multi-million-dollar machines, huge football field size machines. How are we going to continue to troubleshoot these machines on the job and feel like we have the tools we need to troubleshoot these machines on the job? Well, as we talked about before, it's going to be super important to be able to have the documentation of those schematics we need to troubleshoot all in one central location. Now, I want you to reflect right now, for those of you who answered the poll, right? All right, machine number 7, or whatever machine it is in your facility, it's down, it's not working. We need to start figuring out what's wrong. How long is it going to take you to have that schematic in front of you and you're looking through it, right? Well, think about that really hard when you think about what we can use in the 21st century. What if that was all online, whether it's a shared drive at your facility or some cloud-based service where you can have everything all in one place, click once and you're into the schematic. Our goal as troubleshooters, right, is really to get a short list of problem components that we might need to fix or to repair as quickly as possible, and narrow down, let's say, hundreds of components on a gigantic machine down to just a few that are related to the issue at hand, right? That's what troubleshooting is all about. Narrowing hundreds of possible causes to maybe just a couple and then testing each of those out, right? If we can get from the 100 down to, let's say, 2 or 3 components quickly and easily, that's what it's going to take to get that 2 hours of downtime down to 15 minutes of downtime. These next two, right? Ability to sort through schematics and find operational events of interest. So just by looking at a schematic, right, you can't necessarily know which part of the schematic applies to the issue you're dealing with very easily. So in the 21st century, schematics aren't just a PDF scan or a picture you took on your phone and then uploaded to, the internet. There's a lot more to it than that. These schematics can be made interactive and workable where, okay, you see actually a color-coded map of exactly the operation you're looking for. Let's say the operational event that's not working right now, and fix the issue quickly. Minimizing the time spent in front of hazards as well. So what I mean by this is, if you can figure out how many components there are involved in this certain process you're trying to troubleshoot without having to poke around inside of a panel. The less time you need to be poking around inside of a live electrical panel or within rotating equipment, even if it's locked out, the the safer it is for you. So if the tools you have for troubleshooting can get you further along the road of figuring out what the issue is without having to put yourself in harm's way, man, will that pay itself back, not only in obviously time, but in potential really terrible, costly hazards that could cause really terrible injuries if you're not careful. Find the manufacturers and part numbers, right? So once you troubleshoot the device, let's say you find the schematic, let's say you find the solenoid that's gone bad, or the valve that's not working properly, or the relay that just stopped kicking on and off. You need to be able to find the manufacturer and part numbers quickly for replacement. So some of us use our central maintenance, like SAP maintenance systems, to find these things. So the quicker you can get to this, the better, right? And then the ability to switch between different processes and systems. So for instance, if you have hydraulic cylinders, like you can kind of see on this example page here, and they're not lifting, and you end up going through all the hydraulic components leading up to it, well, hydraulics only half the story, right? There has been an electrical signal sent to that solenoid valve. So maybe the problem's on the electrical side. So you have to be able to switch between the hydraulic, the pneumatic, and the electrical prints for a certain operation and for a certain part of the process quickly, readily, and easily to get that troubleshooting done quickly. I just want you to think about, if we go with the, century old version of using schematics, paper schematics, right? Think of how long it would take you to find the same electrical print as the same hydraulic print for a given machine. And I won't wait too long because I know from my experience it takes a long time, that the hydraulic prints for a certain machine are impossible to find, or B, completely in a different spot than an electrical print, or maybe on a complete other page inside the binder where you got to flip back and forth. And then at the end of the day, a lot of us on the technician side of things can only look at a schematic for so long before we need to relate it to the real world and what we actually need to do in the field. So in the 21st century, these solutions to help us with troubleshooting really need to be able to relate those machine schematics to the real world quickly and readily as possible. So in other words, okay, I see this square looking schematic symbol that's supposed to indicate a valve, but okay, that's well and fine, but where is that valve in the real world? How can I find it? What's its part number? What's its setting supposed to be? Just give me what I need quickly. And then finally, we don't all troubleshoot the same way twice, right? So one technician might troubleshoot by really understanding the schematics and flipping through the different pages of schematics, while the other person wants to get hands-on as quickly as possible and see a picture of the devices and what needs to be done. Or someone else might want to learn in words, just tell me in words what needs to happen. So people who learn more verbally versus more discussions based versus more schematics based versus more real world hands-on based really need to have that ability to troubleshoot from different angles in these different solutions. So that's really the most important thing here. Now, during this next kind of phase, I'm just going to show you what some of these might look like here. I'm going to start with the troubleshooting. So for instance, I'm just sharing a new page here. Let me know if you can't see this, but we're seeing a front page of, let's say, a troubleshooting module. This is a TPC's troubleshooting module example called TPC Operate. And what we're seeing here is all the events like we talked about. So here's all the different ways this particular machine that we see here is a coil compactor. So in this coil compactor, here's all the different ways that compactor can run. The binding unit comes in and out, the feeding wheel comes in and out, the flap closes and opens, the lifting table goes up and down. So these are all physical operations that the machine undergoes in different operations. So let's say, in this case, so these are all linked to a different second level of this, which is called the schematic level. So for instance, let's say a technician comes to you and or let's say the operator comes to you and you're the technician for this compactor, and they say, hey, the lifting table won't come up. It used to come up, last shift or last hour, but now it's not lifting anymore. I need your help. So based on that alone, you can, let's say, use this tool, for instance, to say, all right, the lifting table won't come up. Okay, here it is. So here's the operation, lifting table up, for both hydraulic and electrical systems. So let's say, all right, let's see what it takes in our hydraulic system to lift that lifting table up. Click here. And what this particular tool does, it now brings you to the schematic for that machine, but not just a PDF scan of the schematic, but this is a schematic now that's kind of made interactive thanks to 21st century technology of, linking and interactive documentation where, okay, now um, this is color coded to say, okay, these are the exact lines of hydraulic that are going to be pressurized for this lifting table to lift. And here's the exact lines that are going to be the exhaust and metered flow back out again. And you can see quickly, okay, this one here that my cursor is pointing to is going to be involved in the process. This component here, this component here. So this is a solenoid valve. This is a pressure regulator. And up here we see some lifting cylinders for the table. So that's quick. So within, I was describing it to you verbally, but within what, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, we got a short list, like we talked about, right, for troubleshooting, the short list of components on the table. These two lifting cylinders, this pressure regulation, or these flow regulators, these flow controllers, this counterbalance module, and the solenoid valve. Right? Okay, that's well and good, but for those of us who want to say, okay, yes, it's a solenoid valve, but where can I find it? How do I get to it as quickly as possible? You see all these interactive things. This is what makes it interactive. Now the user can hover over any of the buttons associated with these components and see the exact picture and an arrow pointing exactly to where that component is in the field, right? And each of these have their own little link to say, okay, here's that component, here's where it's located, and here's where you find it. So let's say, okay, this solenoid valve, great. Now you click on this and you're brought to the next level of detail on this particular troubleshooting module to say, all right, here's that solenoid valve, this directional control valve. Now here's all the stuff that I have in terms of specifics on how this thing runs. So, okay, here's the directional control valve, here's the make, model, manufacturer, and here's a verbal description of how it's supposed to work. Right? Here's let's say, so this is where you can load this up with it, just as much information as you have. Just know that this technology is available. So here's a video of how this thing works, right? So I'll just run through that so you don't hear all the voiceover, but it is voiced over, where it kind of shows you the animation of how this valve should work. There's safety notes, so how to lock out or tag out this machine, the picture of where it's located in the field, but then additional resources, anything else you want to dump in here. In this case, click here. Here is the spec sheet for this valve, right? So now the spec sheet comes up, and now you're in a 32-page specification manual for this make, model, and manufacturer of solenoid valve, and you're really getting into the weeds now. So again, think about how long it might take to get this information otherwise, and how helpful it might be to have it all in one central location. Yes, it's a little bit of work up front to get this all into a central platform, but once it's there, these machines last for decades and decades, and you will have the greatest, latest, greatest thing to troubleshoot those things, right? Another important aspect of this, right? We talked about the different systems, right? So let's say all those 4 components you were able to check off your list and they're still not working. Well, maybe now we have to look at the electrical side. So we go over to the lifting table and we look at the electrical side now to make that lifting table rise. And now we're looking at the electrical schematic for that lifting table. Right? So now we're on page whatever, 58 of a 100-page electrical schematic, and we've narrowed down on the exact part on where current and voltage are going to be flowing on the electrical side. And this yellow indicates 24 volts DC control voltage coming out of which output port of this PLC? Okay, Q32.3 port of this PLC to this solenoid valve 57B. And where is that located? Oh, there it is. So that's exactly where it's being sent to on the electrical side. And there's pictures of all the devices here. So the technician should be able to readily flip between the different systems. And then finally, what the technician should be able to do in something like this is for any, let's say we saw this color coded event and all the kind of ways to bring it to the real world as quickly as possible. But for those of you who just want to be told, here's what's supposed to happen, here's step by step what should be happening on this process, you click the sequence of operations and here it all is, right? All the process for the troubleshooting. Now, with all this loaded in, right? With all this here, it takes a little bit of time to get this all up and ready. But once it's here, man, this becomes the most valuable tool you can have for troubleshooting to get you the information you need within a matter of minutes instead of hours, or maybe even shifts or days to get this stuff done. The next thing really where this comes together is on the job training. So I want you to imagine if these interactive versions of these schematics, as well as all the different operational events for this machine, are all in one place, not to mention, right, anything else you want to be loaded in here at the end of this page, the sequence of operations for the machine, let's say the startup guide for the machine, the shutdown guide, the manual for this machine, whatever it might be, is all in one place. You hand this iPad, you hand this the phone or the computer with this on it. All you need is an internet browser in this particular case. Like most software tools, it's all accessible cloud-based over the internet. Well, now this person can train off of this central platform. And by the way, if the plant manager says, oh, the settings for this device isn't what's shown here, it should actually be 100 psi instead of 90 psi. Go in here, change it on that back end, and everyone who's training off of this sees the new value or the new picture or the new description of this immediately, instead of having to reprint all the schematics or reprint all the documents. So this becomes just amazingly helpful in terms of these kind of troubleshooting efficiency. This becomes the central hub for on-the-job training of this machine. All right, you're going to be an operator or technician for the quad compactor. Here, take this operate module and learn everything about it, or create a little quiz for them, right? An on-the-job skills verification quiz. I want you to tell me what it takes to make that lifting table go, or let's say here, the wire clamping process to engage, or I want you to tell me the 4 components that are involved in the electrical signal going to run the pumps on this machine, or whatever it might be. There's all sorts of learning that can be done and live troubleshooting that can be done in this type of thing. Now it's time for you to track, right? Track the completion of that training on the job. Let's talk about this. So I'm switching over to another window of my browser. Let's say you are managing all your forms for training now with an online virtual platform. So in this case, let's say you have all your forms listed here. This is TPC's mobile forms builder here. Okay, here's all the tasks this technician will need to learn over the course of their jobs. They'll need to know how to evaluate a circuit, wire a motor, read electrical schematics, perform single stop start station wiring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all these different tasks. So let's say we're just going to take a look at the form of the first one, evaluating an electrical circuit. So when I get into here, if I can, you see, I'm gonna refresh this. I think I timed out I was talking too much beforehand. Log in. Yep, I timed out. So I'm going to log into this. This is another thing that says, okay, these training forms are not going to be easy to access, right? They're going to be all within secure login of the site, which is helpful. So once we log into the site ourselves, we go over to, let's say, the mobile forms builder here, and I think we'll be back to the start. There we go. So let's say we're looking at all of our forms here of our system. They're all loading now. Here they are. And we're going to get into the evaluating of a circuit. And now we're in the form for evaluating a circuit. We run through this, let's say, with our iPad in our hands, or the tablet or the laptop in our hands, but mostly these mobile devices, right? Phone or tablet. I'm in the field to say, all right, I'm observing, I'm practicing the event, and I'm qualifying the event, just like we talked about. And this is going to be the verification step of that form. So here's kind of the intro to the form. And then here's all the steps we need to follow to do this task properly. So you're watching that trainee or that technician learn. Okay, did they sign? Yes. Okay. Did they visually check that the wiring is melted? Yes. Okay, and so on and so forth. I think you get the idea. Some of these are yes and no questions. Yes, yes, yes. But then let's say they forgot to check for ground with their voltage ohm meter. Okay, you're going to say no on that one. And you can kind of assess the quality, and there's some references for the trainer to say, did they use these? Right? Did they use this? It's all on the job training. And it's a way to have a standardized, systematic way of doing on the job training. And so they run through all the stuff. They're understanding how to read the meter and use the multimeter, etc. And then at the end of the form, you're going through all the safety stuff. And then finally, you can sign your name on the signature, make any additional comments on the form, and submit the form. And once you submit the form, it's just established all in one central location for that on-the-job training. Now, I know many of us, I know I worked in a facility that one person isn't just hired at a time. There's usually huge cohorts of different people being hired at all different levels of their learning path. So having a system like this really helps manage, okay, here's the 10 forms for this person and they're this far along, whereas this person's training at the exact same time, but they've gone through these forms and they're 30% complete with all their forms, versus this person is 55% complete in the same amount of time. We're seeing performance, we're seeing quality, we're seeing speed, we're seeing efficiency, we're getting all sorts of intel about our training on the job that we didn't have before. And honestly, I wish I had this when I was doing directing a training program at a manufacturing plant I worked at. It's just this type of software is out here. You can tell I'm fired up about it because it's just something that what we call the 90% of the job where you're doing the job on the job, and we're seeing the skills gap, right? Where a bunch of older technicians are going to be retiring soon, where we're going to be left with a gap of on-the-job skills. If there was a way to teach those skills in a way that appeals to the millennial generation and younger, people who are coming into the trades, right, of electrician, mechanics, facility technicians, and all across the map, HVAC, can learn in a way like this, hands-on, it'll be hugely important. So that's really what I wanted to show you, and I wanted to bring us back to my final. So we talked about these tools, right? So really, that's all I really wanted to get into with everyone here. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to on-the-job training, and there's a bunch of, in fact, infinitely many ways you can approach on-the-job training at your facility. We at TPC Training, we're talking about on-the-job training with all of our customers all the time. So, and troubleshooting is our business. We are in the business of helping the troubleshooting process at any facility, no matter what the scale. So if you want to talk more about this in depth, call us. Reach that central email address of sales@tpctraining.com. Call the number, reach out to me, right? I'm happy to chat. Maybe if you email that email or call a call, you can talk directly to me or any one of our instructors that are teaching in the classroom who have been master electricians their whole lives, or maintenance technicians their whole lives. Talk to one of our expert consultants. There's a lot of people. So basically, our whole company is dedicated to improving the troubleshooting and on-the-job training process. So, got a couple questions coming in. As I'm about to go in and take a look at these questions, I want to let everyone know that the Q&A is open for the next few moments here before we close up shop today. Go to your QA button. If anything has piqued your curiosity about the session, click the QA button, type your question, and I'll be able to try to answer the best I can during this session. So this is a great question coming in from a few of the attendees here on the call. The first question being, what is the process? And a couple of you have a similar question. What is the process of actually getting all these machine schematics into the system, right? It seems like a labor-intensive procedure. And you know what? It can be. First and foremost, the procedure, the work intensiveness of this procedure is all dependent on how easy it's going to be to find those schematics that we're going to use, right? So essentially, let's say the schematic that you're looking for, no one can find it, right? Let's just say worst case scenario. I want a troubleshooting software for this, but I don't know where its schematics are. That makes it a lot harder of an ask because first you have to have the most up-to-date schematic. So it comes a little back cart before the horse, I guess, backtracking you got to do where you got to get with a certified engineer in your area or the manufacturer of the machine who created the original schematics and get the latest version of those as-built schematics in your hand. Hard copy or electronic copy doesn't matter. But once those are made, um, and this is kind of addressing someone else's question, can we have someone from TPC come in and add all the schematics into the system instead of doing it ourselves? And absolutely, that's pretty much how it works when we build our troubleshooting modules is once you sign on to, let's say, producing one of these with us, we do all that detail work, or dare I say tedious and terribly work intensive. It's not too terribly work intensive because we've done it so many times, right? But yeah, we build out these modules for you, and we just check in with your subject matter experts in house along the way if there's any gaps in the schematics or the procedures that we're seeing loading in here. So what we do is kind of on our software developer side. We take these schematics, we make them color coded by operational event. We catalog all of the hundreds, if not thousands, of components by their different operational specifications, and then we load them all into the web-based secure platform for you over the course of the project. And then we deliver it to you through what we call an integration training session, where we train your technician staff in 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 4 training sessions, whatever it takes to get everyone on all night and day shifts covered on how to use this and access this machine on their devices, whatever they may be. In many cases, we also offer the device up. Hey, welcome to the TPC Operate platform. Here's an iPad that goes along with it. Essentially, whatever device you prefer to access these on is best. So, great question about Wi-Fi. So we talked about this being mobile Wi-Fi enabled. So this person says, I'm assuming Wi-Fi in the plant is required. Does it work in areas with no or poor Wi-Fi access? And the answer is absolutely it does. Yeah. So uh, these modules are a package, right? They're a package that can be actually downloaded HTML format for, let's say, Windows computers, or downloaded in Android or iOS format for Android tablets or phones, or iOS, like Apple-based iPads or phones. So they can be downloaded to a device and then accessed offline. I caution that only because our experience with the living, breathing nature of these. For instance, like we talked about, that plant manager um, says, "Oh, this picture needs to be changed, or this setting needs to be changed." Once a setting has been changed, you need to go through the entire crew. Um, I think you go see where I'm going with this. You need to go through the iPads of the entire crew and re-download that module to all the people individually offline. So this doesn't become as readily to change, but as long as you're okay with that, with this being constant no matter what, offline access is definitely doable through direct download once it's been created. The OJT forms you were talking about is, yeah, is it a TPC software? Is it from another company? It is indeed a TPC software. TPC has had this mobile forms platform for the last couple years now, actually several years. And we just recently, what do we call it, coincided that software with our online learning management system. So now you can, let's say, take all your online training, you can track all your classroom and online training with all your on-the-job training on the same platform. So that cohesion into what we call the Fusion, the TPC Fusion software, is new. But the fact that we're able to do mobile forms, it's been around a while. And it's just something through these webinars and things we want to make sure people are aware of. So yes, that answers the other question, I hope, of is it part of our LMS? Kind of, I guess, is the question. The forms are an additional feature to the LMS that can be accessed, essentially. So there's the standard part of the LMS everyone in the training industry can become aware of, where they can assign classes, assign modules, assign courses to people. And then there's the forms, which can be filled out and completed in that mobile forms software. See, you're thinking the right way. I love this question that just came in, and that is, How do you see the potential for using virtual reality to provide a full immersive simulation as a method to provide troubleshooting training? Man, oh man, you speaking my language there, Alec. Thank you for that question. We are in that process of rolling that out right now, Alec. So, for instance, our Simutech training platform, which is a feature of a bunch of 3D immersive electrical troubleshooting simulations. What if we structured these forms and these training experiences around these virtual reality modules, where it's basically a first person view? You're walking around a room, you're getting inside of an actual electrical panel, you're turning on and off different parts of the panel when it comes to relays or motor starters or lights and switches. And then you're able to pull out wires and troubleshoot wires and lockout tagout. Except this time you're not in front of 480 volts. Really, you're just doing it virtually. So if you made a deadly mistake in the simulation, you don't you experience that raise in heart rate through the virtual setting, but you're not actually um, in real harm's way, and you get a lot of great learning that way through that hands-on experience. So yes, Alec, that is part of the overall picture, and it can and should be wrapped into, let's say, okay, I just completed my simulation, now I'm going to jump over to the forum to verify that I know what I'm doing in that simulation. The simulations themselves, in our case, do the tracking for you. So they track how long it took you to troubleshoot a given issue, how safe you were, and how you troubleshooted that issue, and how efficient you were. But then, okay, let's do the same thing in the field. And now this is where we switch over to mobile forums. So this is a gray area. A lot of people have not really jumped into electronic documentation of on-the-job training yet. This is a new type of area as far as I'm concerned from our customers seeing it. And it's just something so valuable that it's worth our while to understand what we can do there. So yes, virtual reality, and then someday, why not put a real virtual reality spin on this, where you're putting on goggles right on your face, these Oculus Quest and Oculus based, not, I think Facebook owns the technology now of these goggles you put on, or you just get a little cardboard thing for your phone and put it on your face, and now you're doing some sort of virtual training, or augmented reality training. All this stuff can be verified through on the job training, can be tested and signed off on these forms, or all this stuff that shows where all the stuff is on TPC Operate, all the different operational specifications. What if you clicked one of the links there and it just brought you to a cloud-based simulation of that operation in action, and you could actually press the button in that virtual field? The ability to produce customized technological training for your folks is just more now than it ever has been before, and TPC is playing ball there. So we're really getting a kick out of designing more 3D simulations. We got some more coming down the pike, for instance. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. But software in general can be used, tools can be used all throughout people's training journey, from the moment they walk in a door straight out of community college or high school even, all the way through years and years of their career. So they're not just going to interact with training. Let's say, okay, they took a class and now a year later they're going to take another class, and that's the training they get. No, the training's happening all the time, right? You're always learning, and there's got to be tools and ability to make that learning as easy as possible. So that's what we've been talking about today. Thank you, AJ, about the LMS question. Yeah, implementing new LMSs. It's a struggle, right? There's lots of stuff. There's lots of people who use LMSs in lots of different ways, and incorporating on the job training abilities and skills verification abilities is a game changer for us. So how does the virtual reality compare? This looks like one of the last questions I can take today, but feel free, and I'll see if I can answer any more in the next 5 minutes. Feel free to use the Q&A for any last second questions. How does virtual reality compare to hands-on training? Do you think virtual reality can replace hands-on? Great question. Let's go down this rabbit hole for just a couple of moments, right? Can virtual reality replace hands-on? I'm sure any technician who's on the call right now is immediately saying, no, of course not. And I would agree, right? Virtual reality cannot replace hands-on training, because as much as realistic as these 3D environments can become. It becomes like a PlayStation 5, for instance, worth of graphics or whatever it might be, surround sound, all the stuff you can put in there. It's still only so good as having your physical tactile sensation of turning that wrench or that screwdriver or putting that actual meter on the leads. However, right, there's some real value in being able to have a environment set up for you that is designed for your learning, right? All the stuff's there, and then it's also built in with scenarios, I guess you could say, where you pulled that wire out of the terminal while it was live. Suddenly you've been shocked, right? And that whole experience of those issues being experienced in the virtual format instead of in person, that could save someone's life, really. So I'd say virtual reality is going to be essential for gaining on the job skills when, let's say, the $1 million equipment can't be just brought offline to learn those skills, right? It's a way to gain these skills in a very close to real life environment, that before they actually do it in real life, I guess you could say. A good way to use these is what we call for skills verification, and that's what these mobile forms are helpful for. So you can get into the scenario in these simulations, say, okay, um, how systematically, how quickly, how efficiently, how safely can I troubleshoot this motor not turning on within the electrical panel? And you can verify as that person's supervisor or training director on how efficient that person is at the troubleshooting process. And that can pay dividends if you start tracking how quickly people are troubleshooting with the tools you're providing them, whether it be this TPC Operate platform or these mobile forms or these simulations. Oh, downtime this month was average of 60 minutes per instance. Now it's an average of 20 minutes per instance. That just saved you guys $8,000 per instance, right? Times 10 times it happened this month. Oh, we just saved $80,000 this month thanks to a little bit quicker troubleshooting by thanks to training. So don't let anyone tell you that training is just going to be a sink of money, an investment of money, because it bleeds right back into that reduced downtime through more effective troubleshooting. Okay. You know what? That's about all the time we had today. Thank you for being here, everyone. It's been really, really a wonderful, engaging discussion. Thank you for the great questions. And you see here the email, the phone number. Please call anytime you have any questions. Again, there's a lot of customized ways you can approach on the job training in your facility and troubleshooting tools and providing them in your facility. If you want to know more about the ins and outs, like someone was asking about the production process for TPC Operate, or how mobile forms might work for you, or how these web-based formats might actually work in real life, or how they're put together, just give us a call and we can talk about the ins and outs. All right, thanks so much for being here, everyone, and have a great day.